Why don't more people know about this?
I know, why don't they? I think it's because uh, people have their jobs and they're working and they're not really thinking maybe about their retirement as much as they might. And so a lot of people like to invest in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and not really think about it, kind of set it and forget it. But self-directed IRAs have been around for, gosh, almost 50 years.
Well, how about we start at the beginning? What are self-directed IRAs?
Right. Well, I think you know what an IRA is. It's an individual retirement arrangement, and it was formed again 50 years ago. And ever since IRAs existed in 1975, you've been able to invest in really anything except life insurance contracts and collectibles. So, what makes it self directed is that the assets that go into the plan are not tied to the stock market, they're non market correlated. So, it's alternative assets. So, if you want to invest in market correlated assets, that's when you go to a broker dealer. But if you want to invest in assets like real estate or notes or cryptocurrency, precious metals, things like this, you use a self-directed IRA that lets you take those retirement dollars, invest in these assets, and have the proceeds be tax-free or tax-deferred.
So, if these self-directed IRAs are so free, I mean, the ability to invest in. I looked at the IRS code. I'm a nerd like that, and the types of investments that you could, like you mentioned, things like marine loans. I had no idea what that was. uh, uh, why can't I go to, say, Schwab, Fidelity, and look up some kind of a code for resource? Why can't I do that with a brokerage? And maybe that's a good lead into what's the difference between, say, a self-directed IRA custodian and your traditional brokerage?
Well, I think when you're dealing with a brokerage and they are licensed by the SEC and they're licensed, it's like a 6 or 67 or a Series 7 license, and those licenses preclude them from investing or advising their clients on traditional or non-traditional assets, on alternative assets. So they're not really allowed to do that. In fact, there was a time when I was looking at getting my Series 7 license, and I also had a real estate license. And I realized at that time that I would have to give up my real estate license in order to have a Series 7. They were, exclusive of one another. So I think that's the reason. I think that people who are financial advisors, they just can't advise outside of stock market correlated assets.
Okay. So your traditional brokerage, they are IRA custodians, but also sell a product so they can advise on the products they sell and hold them themselves. Whereas the self-directed IRAs are more hands-off. Right? They just hold.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, we custody the assets. That's exactly right. And we don't sell any assets, and we don't tell people what to invest in. So that's why it's self-directed.
In your experience, what do people use these self-directed IRAs for, if not for stocks and bonds?
I think people like diversity with their investing, and so this gives you diversity. The number one asset class, though, for self-directed IRA investors is private stock, or what you might call private placements, syndications, a lot of different names for the same thing. That's the number one asset class. Also, you could make loans with your IRA. Like my IRA, if say you're opening a business, my IRA can lend you money and lend your business money, and then your business would either pay the loan back to me, or if my IRA was an equity investor in your business, then your business would pay me like through a K1 or a shareholder distribution.
So this is actually where I originally learned about self-directed IRAs, is when I started purchasing properties for our own portfolio and borrowing private money from other everyday people who were investors. They want to invest in real estate, but they're more hands off. They wanted a passive role. And have a W-2 of the professionals that want to invest in real estate, and they can invest in other people's projects. Anything from, like you said, single family homes to apartment building syndications and everything in between.
It's true.
What is a, speaking of which, what is a checkbook account?
Well, a checkbook IRA, I laugh because there are a lot of misunderstandings about it. You could also more properly call it an IRA owned LLC. So what it is it's a special purpose LLC, and it in the operating agreement has special language that describes that its purpose is to be used, for IRA investing. And so the IRA will buy 100% of the initial units of that LLC. So that LLC actually becomes an asset of the plan. So the IRA is opened with money in it. The IRA buys 100% of the initial units of the LLC. Okay. And then in exchange, the IRA sends money into the LLC's checking account. All right. So you've got the IRA as the owner, and then you've got the LLC under the IRA as the asset of the plan. So now if someone has an IRA-owned LLC, also called a checkbook IRA, then they can, just like it implies, write checks. Maybe you're at an auction and you want to invest in auction properties. So what you would do is you could just write a check right there. Now, you don't always need a checkbook IRA, an IRA-owned LLC, but it's a tool that you can use. I think a frequent misunderstanding about this is that it's sort of a gift with purchase, that if you open a self-directed IRA, the IRA-owned LLC comes with it. And that's not true at all. It's you seek out a third party to create the LLC. The IRA is named as the owner initially. And again, the IRA buys the initial units. And then the IRA funds the checking account of the LLC. So that's how it goes.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Do you say that you direct does or does not do checkbook accounts?
We allow them, yes. We allow them. The account holders do them. We allow them. Some custodians do not, but we do.
Okay. And so what are some of the, I guess, potential pitfalls with self-directed IRAs and with the checkbook IRA?
That's such a great question. We've been recently, sort of delving into that a little bit more because we like to give our account holders the pro and con of any situation that they may run into. So the downside of the LLC is, number one, you pay a lot of money to set it up. You'll pay maybe an attorney to create it. If you're in California, you pay $800 a year to the franchise tax board to keep it. So there's that expense. And I mean, you may not even need an IRA-owned LLC. So the first thing to think of is, do you really need it? There could be other, filing fees and so forth to consider. Also, these accounts, when you invest with them, well, you don't have the benefit of somebody like you, Direct IRA Services, looking at your deals to see if there are what we call prohibited transactions. A prohibited transaction is a real threat to your IRA because it can burst the tax protected bubble and make that money taxable. So when we look at someone's investment, we're taking a look not just to make sure that it's vested correctly or that it's an asset that we can custody, but we're also looking to see, is this a prohibited transaction? Because of course, as a business, we don't want to be involved in an account holder's prohibited transaction either. So we're going to look at that. Now, if you're using the IRA-owned LLC, you don't have the benefit of our view to the transaction. So you don't have that third-party review on the deal. So that can be a problem. And it's come up before. One time I was talking to this couple, and they were talking about investing their IRAs. Each of them, the husband and wife, each had an IRA. Each IRA had its own LLC, which was a good way to structure it. But then what they wanted to do is come together and invest in a building, which normally is fine. But it turns out this building was adjacent next door to an asset to a building they already owned. And so it's a prohibited transaction. It's kind of convoluted here, but they would be receiving personal benefit. And think about it like this. If you own building A and building B is sitting next to it, if building B sells, that's going to affect the value of building A, right? And so that would give the IRA holder a personal benefit. So their personal property would increase in value from this sale in this case. And so they would personally benefit from their IRA, and that is technically a prohibited transaction, okay? That's how subtle prohibited transactions can be, which is why we offer a 20-minute consultation, or however long it takes really, to talk to people about their deals and find out what they're doing, what their intentions are, talk about the assets, who are the investors, so we can weed out, is this a prohibited transaction? Now, if you have an IRA-owned LLC, no one's having that conversation with you. And you can go ahead and make a transaction that could blow the tax-protected bubble of your account. So that's a downside to the IRA-owned LLC. Plus, the IRS just received something like $80 billion. And they have more, auditors out on the streets. And so your IRA-owned LLC is low-hanging fruit because the IRS understands that there's probably a prohibited transaction in this LLC. A lot of people don't know how to properly keep the books on an IRA-owned LLC. For example, you can't use that money for personal use at all. So maybe your IRA-owned LLC owns a house, and you think, well, I'm going to go drive to that house, and that house is an asset in my LLC. So I'm going to use the debit card for my IRA-owned LLC to pay for gas to get to that house. But then you're having personal use of your funds, and that's a prohibited transaction. So it's easy to commit a prohibited transaction in one of these.